USA is often regarded as the most powerful nation on the planet. But in case of an attack, can the US effectively guard its cities from foreign invasions? So many countries hold grudges against the US. Examples are China, Russia, North Korea, and most recently, the Hamas group in Palestine and Iran. Iran in particular has not been in good terms with the US for a very long time. And most recently, they made a threat to attack US cities if the US doesn't stop helping Israel in destroying Palestine. Many experts have warned that this can escalate into a bigger global conflict, with America being a major target. China accuses the US of escalating all these conflicts, and at the same time, thinks only the US can bring an end to this conflict by taking a step back and trying to bring peace to the Middle East rather than escalate things. China has cautioned that the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas could spiral into a worldwide war, attributing the US's backing of Israel as the trigger. China suggests that other nations may come to Palestine's aid, similar to how the US supports Israel, thus leading to a potential global conflict. The immediate concern is that US cities could become vulnerable targets for retaliatory attacks from opposing countries. Despite the potential threats, the American public seems unaware of the situation, with the US government standing firm in its support for Israel, unknowingly inviting a possible conflict. China's warning is a serious reminder of the potential consequences of the US's unwavering support for Israel. The concern is that this could lead to a global conflict, with nations taking sides. Such an escalation could expand the conflict beyond its current boundaries and draw in countries that were initially not involved. This could result in increased vulnerability for US cities, as nations opposed to the US's position on the Israel-Hamas conflict may pose a greater risk of retaliatory attacks. Such attacks could have real consequences that will affect both the lives of US citizens and political landscapes negatively. The warning from China serves as a wake-up call for the American public, highlighting their lack of awareness regarding the gravity of the situation. While the US government champions a morally justifiable position, it must be mindful of the unintended consequences of its actions, which could lead to a broader conflict. Clear and transparent communication is of the utmost importance in ensuring that citizens are well informed about potential threats and the broader implications of the nation's stance. Iran's involvement in issuing a stern warning to the US further exacerbates the Middle East conflict, posing a significant threat to regional stability. The situation is complex, involving historical grievances, territorial disputes, and conflicting narratives. It should be important to note that Iran has been allied with Hamas for a very long time. They have not just been providing them with financial aid, they also train their soldiers and arm them too. During his address, Foreign Minister Amir Abdullah leveled an accusation against the United States, claiming that they were involved in the alleged genocide occurring in Gaza. He cautioned that if the US persists in backing Israel's actions, there could be unpredictable and potentially severe outcomes. The specific nature of these consequences is uncertain, which has sparked worries about the potential for increased instability in the region. Iran has been supporting Hamas for a long time, not just recently. They have a strong partnership because they both oppose Israel. Iran sees Hamas as a valuable ally in the region. It helps Iran have influence and counterbalance its enemies like Israel and the United States. Iran has warned the United States strongly, but it's not clear what exactly Iran will do if the US keeps supporting Israel's actions. When they talk about uncontrollable consequences, it means there could be big problems, and people are worried about what might happen. The global community has expressed worry and urged for a reduction in tensions. Many countries have echoed the necessity for a halt in hostilities and encourage peaceful talks, underscoring the significance of tackling the underlying reasons behind the conflict and finding a long-lasting resolution. The United Nations is confronted with the task of mediating between opposing parties. The growing tensions between Iran and the United States, coupled with the ongoing conflict in Gaza, are causing significant worries about the overall stability of the Middle East. The region has long been plagued by geopolitical rivalries, sectarian tensions, and prolonged conflicts. Any further deterioration of the situation could have widespread consequences, impacting not only the directly involved parties, but also neighboring nations and the global community at large. It is crucial to make earnest efforts to de-escalate tensions and seek a diplomatic resolution. The United Nations and other diplomatic channels must play a central role in facilitating dialogue between the conflicting factions. The international community should strive to create a conducive environment for negotiations, address the legitimate grievances of all parties, and seek common ground which would bring about peace long-term. The reasons why Iran and other nations criticize the United States and why their response is different towards Israel are complicated. The US openly supports Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas and Palestine, which has led to strained relations and isolation with certain countries like Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia. This strong support for Israel also affects diplomatic efforts and the process of improving relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It's challenging to balance alliances and build broader diplomatic relationships in the Middle East due to the very complex geopolitical dynamics of this region. Different nations may have various reasons for not approving of the United States' support for Israel. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has been a major source of tension in the Middle East. The United States' staunch and unwavering support for Israel, without any conditions, has faced significant criticism. As a result, the United States has experienced diplomatic challenges, strained relations, and isolation from other countries. The impact of this strain can be seen in the freezing of the process to improve relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, among other consequences. The way the United States has handled its alliances in the Middle East, which some perceive as biased and inconsistent, has increased tensions with Arab countries. This has led to a sense of isolation on the global stage for the US. Navigating relationships in the complex landscape of Middle Eastern geopolitics presents significant challenges. As a result of the strained diplomatic ties, other global powers like Russia and China have stepped in to fill the void. They have taken advantage of this opportunity to assert their influence in the region and present themselves as supporters of the Palestinian cause, offering a different viewpoint on the ongoing tensions in the area. The United States has traditionally had a significant influence on diplomatic strategies in the Middle East. However, due to recent criticisms and its reduced involvement, other global powers have stepped forward. Notably, Russia and China have emerged and called for a more balanced approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Unlike the United States, which has been seen as strongly supporting Israel, Russia, and China, are advocating for fairness, peace, and dialogue. This evolving dynamic challenges the traditional roles of global powers in the region and suggests a potential reconfiguration of alliances and influence. When the United States steps back from the situation, it creates a space for other countries to become more involved. This makes the situation in the Middle East more complicated. Russia and China are becoming more important players, which affects the conflict between Israel and Hamas and the relationships between different countries. The power balance is changing, and the influence of these new players makes things even more complex. The United States being less involved allows Russia and China to have a bigger role in deciding what happens in the Middle East. This not only affects the Israel-Hamas conflict, but also has wider effects on how the entire Middle East will be shaped politically. It's interesting to note that even within the United States, there is disagreement about the country's actions. The government's strong and unwavering support for Israel has sparked various reactions among Americans. Many people in the country have genuine concerns about the possible outcomes of this position. They worry that it could result in more conflicts in the region and increase the risk of terrorism at home. These concerns from the American public show how decisions in foreign policy can directly affect the well-being of its citizens. Many Americans feel uneasy about the US government's stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict, and this unease extends to concerns about its broader impact. Some people worry that the strong support for Israel could make tensions in the Middle East worse, potentially leading to more conflicts in the region. They believe that these conflicts could increase the risk of terrorism, which might affect the safety of people in the United States. It's important to understand that this unease isn't just about a distant conflict, but also about how the choices made in foreign policy can have consequences at home. The divisions within the United States regarding its approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict are not just about international relations, but they also directly relate to the well-being and safety of its citizens. It is important to address these concerns in order to maintain stability within the country. The United States is currently grappling with internal disagreements, and having open conversations about the potential consequences of its foreign policy decisions is crucial. Citizens want reassurance and a clear understanding of how their government's actions overseas may impact their lives at home. Critics argue that the United States' approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict has been flawed, particularly in terms of its effectiveness in promoting peace. Economic initiatives and investment projects that were intended to foster peace have not yielded the desired outcomes. This criticism highlights the complex nature of international relations and the need for nuanced approaches to resolving conflicts. The economic consequences of such misjudgments further highlight the broader impacts of the United States' foreign policy decisions. One significant criticism directed at the United States is the belief that its relentless support for Israel has contributed to conditions that resemble apartheid and ongoing violence. There are growing calls for the United States to take a more active role in promoting a solution where both Israelis and Palestinians can have their own states. The ethical aspects of the United States' position add another layer of complexity to the ongoing discussion about the Israel-Hamas conflict. Critics argue that a comprehensive and ethically responsible approach is needed in international relations. Despite these criticisms and concerns, the US government continues to strongly support Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas attacks. This reiteration highlights the challenges of balancing international alliances, moral considerations, and the pursuit of regional stability, especially as the US faces diplomatic isolation. Reaffirming support becomes a strategic move to maintain its position in the changing global landscape. China has expressed its criticism of the United States' approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict. According to various sources like Reuters, Chatham House, and Al Jazeera, the Chinese government has taken a cautious stance in its diplomacy regarding the conflict. It has chosen not to condemn Hamas, the group involved in the conflict with Israel. China's official statements have become more critical of Israel, with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi stating that Israel's actions against Hamas and Gaza have exceeded self-defense. China has consistently shown support for the Palestinian cause and maintains a policy of neutrality towards Western influence in the global order. Instead of openly supporting Hamas, China has used its veto power at the United Nations to block a US proposed resolution calling for a temporary pause in the conflict for humanitarian reasons. China justified its veto by pointing out that the resolution did not call for restraint from both sides. This indicates that China is willing to seek a resolution for the matter. The US is the only party that appears unwilling to find a solution, and there may be consequences for this approach. Let us know what you think about this video in the comment section. If you loved the video, make sure to like and subscribe.